For a while, it has been a speculation that Galakrond was the original dragon aspect and a failed experiment manipulated by Yogg-Saron, but now we are getting brand new info from 10.1.5 that really further confirms this. Iridikron is working with the Infinites, and he seems to be using something that Chromie refers to as the ancient dragon soul in this dungeon to, as Iridikron says, reclaim the hunger that was lost to the ages, and he seems to have even succeeded in this. As you may know, the Dragon Soul was originally used to siphon Dragon Aspect's power and was something the old gods got Deathwing to create, and this might serve the exact same purpose to siphon the power of the original failed Dragon Aspect that was corrupted by Yogg-Saron. Furthermore, there is a questline with Alexstrasza betraying the Titans which could indicate that she may fall victim to Iridikron's new Galakrond filled Dragon Soul, and she could literally become the new Galakrond. So what is all this new information, and is Iridikron literally just going to bring Galakrond back, use his power against us in the present time, and is Galakrond really the aspect before the aspects? So Father's Day is coming, and what better gift can you get than the Rage Wallet or the Rage Key Keys that you can get up to 40% off on a really great sale until June 10th with my link in the description, so rage.com/Doran. It is an amazing wallet. You can fit up to 12 cards, you can put cash on the side, there's so many designs you can choose from. They also have a key case that is super cool, super sleek. It doesn't clink these little keys inside, so if you buy both you can get a discount on that as well. So make sure to check out rage.com/Doran and click my link in the description below. So this has been a speculation for quite a while, and rightfully so, because we had received a ton of hints over this past year, from the Ultima documents to the tier questline and various other mentions that we have gathered, but until recently this really was more of like a tinfoil unhinged theory with some pretty good evidence. But now we're pretty much stepping into very close to confirmed territory, as we have the new mega dungeon from 10.1.5 that we can literally play through. It isn't all there, some cinematics are obviously missing at the moment that are going to bridge the gap to what is really going on, but we are definitely getting closer. Iridikron is a boss in this dungeon. He is quite literally using a Proto-Dragon Soul. We have Galakrond himself, and we have the original aspects as Proto-Dragons in this Return to Back in Time scenario. Now, what is really interesting though is that this seems like Iridikron, like this Iridikron is our Iridikron. This doesn't seem to be like a version of him back in the day, like a young Iridikron, but he has literally been confirmed in this dungeon to be working with the Infinite Dragonflight, and he's trying to reclaim the power of Galakrond. That is obviously going to be super relevant into the storyline that will be happening very soon. So far, there have been some pretty good hints that Galakrond was in fact the original aspect and sort of a failed experiment of the Titan Keepers, most importantly Tyr, and failed as in really failed, that it almost completely destroyed them with how bad it got. However, at the start of this expansion with the Ultima documents, it was confirmed that Yogg-Saron was behind the corruption of Galakrond and him turning into this insane monstrosity. I mean, keep in mind, this guy turned from your pretty regular Proto-Drake that is not that really big, I mean, it's just a Proto-Drake, into this gigantic monstrosity whose head is literally the size of Stormwind, which is like a city with hundreds of thousands of people. Now, it is 100% confirmed that Yogg-Saron had compromised the waters and hated him. We got a message from Tyr where they're investigating how Yogg-Saron managed to corrupt the water supply exactly in the first place, and he is promising that the evolution of another Galakrond will never be triggered again. However, this brings us to who Galakrond really is. He really doesn't seem to just be a regular dragon, just some random drake that got caught in Yogg-Saron's trap, but more than likely, he was the first champion of Tyr and the original dragon aspect. It is of no surprise that Tyr in particular was really obsessed with dragons. He really believed they would be super useful to the Titan Order, even though others really didn't. We can see that with the new questline in 10.1.5 with Tyr's storyline, where he really just believes in the mortals and the dragons and their power. Now, at the start of the dragon fight, we got into his laboratory. We discovered a room where he had experimented on regular elemental dragons, inverting and twisting their natural elements and just seeing how it plays out, so just kinda pushing buttons. Now, the next room after this are the aspects, which is an experiment that obviously succeeded, and I'm almost 100% certain this is all intentional to show us that this was the prototype of the original experiment that he learned from, and then he used to gather knowledge and create the dragon aspects, but the original one definitely backfired against him. Now, this story continues in the new Mega Dungeon as we're traveling to an alternate universe that really just seems to be just a complete mess. I mean, we have corrupted Tyr, we have corrupted Chromie, and a whole bunch of other shenanigans happening, and it goes back to the time of the defeat of Galakrond. what is important to the topic of this video is that we discovered the original aspects before they became the aspects. We see Galakrond, and there is even this blight of Galakrond, like this blob full of necromantic power and just a whole bunch of raised dragons, as you would naturally expect. Interestingly enough, this really does seem to be related to death magic and necromancy that we have known about in the past. Who even really knows if this is actually the case? This could literally just be pure death magic. Now, the key thing here to note is that we see Iridikron in two forms. We see his humanoid and dragon form, but this seems to be Iridikron from our timeline that has come here to gather the essence of Galakrond and almost certainly bring it back to us. Chromie essentially confirms that he is working together with the Infinite Dragonflight, and while we do actually defeat him at this point, it is unclear what happens next. It is likely there is some sort of a cinematic here, but he really is not the final boss of this dungeon, and this obviously just seems like foreshadowing for what is to come. And until we see that cinematic, it really seems like he actually succeeded in this mission despite us defeating him in this scenario. Now, the most important thing out of all this stuff is he is actually siphoning the essence of Galakrond into a vessel, and Chromie herself says this seems exactly like the Dragon Soul, but like an ancient version of it. So this is not even my speculation. I mean, she literally says this is an ancient Dragon Soul. Then after this, we have a line from Iridikron where he next says, "Hunger lost to the ages, one which I shall reclaim." This is obviously related to the hunger that was constantly mentioned throughout Dragonflight, but what I think is the most important thing to mention is the fact that he is using an artifact that is pretty much the proto-Dragon Soul. To remind you of the lore, it was the old gods that convinced Deathwing to create the Dragon Soul, and most importantly, it was used to take a part of each dragon aspect power, essentially a vessel to contain it and to become super powerful, and he pretty much just blasted with it. Seeing that it was Yogg-Saron that created Galakrond, it is likely that they already had the original Dragon Soul, the one we're seeing Iridikron use, and it is very likely that he's gathering the power of the failed, very powerful dragon aspect Galakrond in order to use it in our current timeline. Of course, we're still kinda stuck in the middle, but all things right now are pointing that these Iridikron's terrible bargains are in fact going to be pretty obvious. I mean, the most obvious speculation, and it probably is going to have something to do with Galakrond and old god stuff. It is now likely that in the ancient past, he probably attempted to do the same thing, to gather the power to the timelines of ancient Galakrond and to recreate his hunger that was a blight on Azeroth. As you may know, Iridikron is all about dragon supremacy, and what better and more powerful dragon is there than the absolute unit that is Galakrond? I'm pretty sure when he realized that he can defeat the Titan Order and Neltharion with his void magic, he probably just tried to revert back to manifesting a new Galakrond, and this is a particularly painful point in dragon history, which is why they were just so disgusted by it. I mean, all of them, even the Incarnates, and now it seems like he is trying to do it again. Of course, none of this has been 100% confirmed, but seriously, all hints right now seem to have been pointing at this hidden side of Iridikron, and all this just being Galakrond related. An interesting fact is that we also have a new Tyr questline from the new patch that shows us how Tyr himself fought Yogg-Saron's generals in Tirisfal Glades, and one of them says how all his aspects will fail, and everything he said actually happened apart from Alexstrasza betraying him, and this is probably something that we are yet to see. We also in the cinematic see Alexstrasza turning into this old god general, so I could totally see Iridikron coming back with this power of Galakrond to just blast Alexstrasza, or to turn Alexstrasza into new Galakrond to kind of infest her with this curse, which is probably going to be a super interesting storyline, and this could even relate to her undead brother Dralad that has also been previously hinted at. Now, what is also super interesting is that we could actually see the involvement of Yogg-Saron himself, because we know he was the originator of Galakrond, and all of this combined with the other old god hints and Azad hints that we have been getting all this time. Also, his generals are shown in this questline with here, so all in all, things are definitely moving. We can kind of guess the direction, but a lot of this stuff is of course unclear and could really go either way. Thank you for watching. Check out what is going on with Alter and Draenor nearly 50 years later by clicking on the screen, and check out Onon's Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time!